illustrates how poor transit systems and job decentralization isolates workers in inner city neighborhoods from suburban job centers, reducing access to employment. So, like I said, like we saw on the map, Detroit is huge. Detroit is huge, and there are pockets of suburbs and urban areas, as well as low income and higher income areas. But we have seen a clustering of suburban jobs and those in lower income areas not having access to said jobs. So, however, the city is in the dawn of agglomeration economies where clustered industries could boost productivity and attract talent if supported by inclusive policy. Finally, the low wages are a benefit to the businesses, of course, but it has disqualified Detroit from being able to compete with other cities within the same fields and job levels, which once again draws people out of the city. So this moves us on to our housing market. A pro about the housing market is, once again, we do have affordable housing and investment opportunities within the city. Detroit's median house price is 70,000 to 100,000 versus the national average of 400,000. This affordable housing assists in first-time buyers' purchasing power. This opens the door for a lot of people who are getting a house for the first time to be able to purchase that house, as well as investors and developers have a lot of mobility in purchasing. And we have seen a lot of programs like Detroit Land Bank Authority sell vacant homes at a low price to encourage neighborhood restoration. So a con about this is blight and disinvestment. Tens of thousands of vacant or abandoned homes due to population loss. So for a lot of reasons, like I was kind of talking about in the labor market portion, people are leaving, especially during the collapse that hit the city pretty hard. A lot of people left, and due to that, there was a rise in abandoned homes, blighted properties that reduced neighboring property values and deter new buyers. So this is actually kind of funny to me because, like I was saying, coming here and hearing outside perspectives about what they thought about Detroit, a lot of people said there were a lot of abandoned homes and a lot of blight. That's something that is really kind of known here. And we have seen that this has become a large belief due to blighted properties breaking down an entire neighborhood, entire like census tracts, even its property values. High property taxes in some neighborhoods can disincentivize renovation or long-term investment. And some revitalization efforts have led to gentrification in areas like Midtown and downtown, contributing to rising rents and displacing of longtime residents. So, all in all, to talk about the housing market, the affordability increases consumer surplus for housing and lowers barriers of entry in real estate markets. This is really great for the economy because the real estate market being a more competitive market within the city is great for everyone. And the ability for there to be a consumer surplus for housing is, as said, great for especially first time buyers, which would bring more people to the city. Low housing prices reflect excess supply from decades of depopulation, which I kind of already spoke about, and specialized development has created localized demand spikes, especially in Midtown and downtown. So we are now seeing a focus in development, what could be a really great angle for housing in the entire city has boiled down to being kind of almost over abused in Midtown and downtown. The housing market triggers positive externalities when homeowners renovate or invest, improving neighborhood appeal, and negative externalities result from vacant or blighted properties, reducing nearby property values and attracting crime. Investment and job opportunities are increasingly concentrated in central areas, creating a spatial mismatch between affordable housing and employment access, which was kind of ties us to the labor market portion. So finally, I'd like to speak about the quality of life in terms of pros and cons. So the pros are cultural revival. If you ever come to the city, you'll hear every Detroiter, you'll see merch or Detroiters talk about the comeback story. After the recession that hit us hard, Detroit was what a lot of people think it is to this day. But we are experiencing, we have seen a renaissance in terms of our museums, our venues, our community theaters, and our sports. We are seeing a newer, positive outlook on the city, and this obviously really boils into a lot of different things. Well, I guess all these pros kind of boil into overall mental health and positive attitude towards the city, which of course impacts quality of life. As I already spoke about, the affordable housing is obviously a pro, as well as investments in core areas. So downtown Detroit, Midtown, which was once riddled with crime and known to be a very dangerous and unpleasant place to be, has seen investments in infrastructure, schooling, businesses, both public and private. So the Detroit that my mom knew, the Detroit that my grandparents knew is way different from the Detroit that I now know. So additionally, grassroots efforts, residents have mobilized to provide public goods. Once again, Detroit is vast, and there are unfortunately neighborhoods outside of downtown or midtown that are being neglected, but residents have put a lot of effort into mobilizing public goods and access to these goods. So a con is what I sound like a broken record mentioning, but spatial mismatch. Jobs are in suburbs in the downtown area where many residents live away from these zones, and it kind of goes into the transportation notion that they can't have access to these jobs, as well as just the little externalities in terms of knowledge spillover that a lot of residents are missing out on, and networking and social capital that aren't accessible to people in lower income areas. Another con is public good inequality. There is a very obvious discrepancy between one neighborhood's access to schooling or parks and in comparison to another's. It's quite stark in Detroit, and this kind of leads me on to the next point, which is historic redlining. Redlining in Detroit is in my humble opinion, one of the most stark and visually evident systems to this day. Even though redlining obviously is quote unquote no longer, there are still very obvious I wouldn't even say remnants, but a very obvious presence of it to this day. As well as violent crime and poverty crime creates spillover effects. So yeah, this notion that Detroit, you can't have anything in Detroit, you are gonna get hurt going downtown. These spillover effects have created a really bad name, and that kind of can really combat what I was talking about earlier in terms of the attitude surrounding Detroit. So to kind of paint a bigger picture between those two things, economic opportunities and public services are unevenly distributed across Detroit's neighborhood. Wealthier, gentrified areas enjoy more investments in infrastructure, public goods, and access to all these externalities, while others face market failures in form of underprovision. As we all know, and this is a really big driving point for this section, is externalities shape neighborhood outcomes. The positive externalities, we got urban farming, we have seen gardens pop up, there's art initiatives, like I said, we are in a cultural renaissance, localized business development, improved community welfare. These are all really great things. However, there are negative externalities, including the abandoned properties, poor public transit, and environmental hazards impose social costs not reflected in market prices. Urban renewal must include equity-focused intervention. This means inclusive zoning, transit subsidies, community land trusts, and reinvestment in historically underserved areas. So this is essentially the idea that for us to be a better city, we need to bridge these gaps that we've seen in the labor market, of course, the housing market, of course, but also in terms of our quality of life. Market-based solutions must be paired with corrective public policy to internalize externalities and support equitable access to opportunities. So, all in all, as presented by my beautiful collage and all the points that I brought up, Detroit does have a lot of pros and cons in terms of our labor, in terms of our housing, in terms of our quality of life. All in all, Detroit has made extremely great strides, but there is still further to go in terms of an urban economics lens. All in all, thank you. Thanks for watching.